Hi, I'm Melissa, and this is the Book Break. And today we're talking to a memoir author, and her book is called Beautiful Ashes, and her name is Shelly Edwards Jorgensen. Let's bring her in.
Hi.
Hi, Shelly. So I've chatted with you a little bit. I love your book. Love your book. Beautiful Ashes. And in case you guys can't quite see, a true story of murder, betrayal, and one woman's search for peace. So let's just jump right in. Shelly, I would like you to take us through a little bit of your story.
Well, Beautiful Ashes is a story about finding healing and hope after overcoming extreme adversity. For starters, I grew up in a domestic violent home. When I was 15, my dad murdered my mother and burned our house down. He was an alcoholic with a Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde personality. It was really a shock to the community because we lived in this upper middle class suburban lifestyle, and from the outside we look like the Cleavers from Leave It to Beaver, but in reality of what happened behind closed doors was so different. My sister and I were not home at the time. We were actually at basketball practice, and a neighbor came to pick us up just to tell us that our house was on fire.
Wow.
And yeah, so it took 2.5 years for my dad to actually go to trial. He wasn't arrested right away. The story was broadcast on the 11 o'clock news that night, actually, with pictures of our house on fire, and it was a pretty public event, so it was pretty traumatic.
Yeah. Well, and you were so young at 15. And I think, one of the things that you just said, I think is really important for people to understand. You lived in a home with domestic violence, your father constantly hurting your mother, your sister and you trying to pull him off, but at the same time trying to not make him so mad that then you become the next person attacked. But on the outside, people didn't see that. And I think sometimes we think that if somebody's home or family looks really good, especially now with social media, we see that picture perfect thing, but that may not be what's going on in the background. Shelly, talk about for a minute how your family, one of the cardinal rules was you keep these kinds of family negative things, abusive things within yourself. You don't talk about them to anyone. How did you manage through that? How did it affect you and the trial? Because that's an important thing.
Well, that's the thing is from a very young age, I learned that you don't talk. I mentioned in the book these morning after breakfasts because a lot of these violent outbursts would happen on the weekends because they're associated with drinking, and so literally my dad would one night on maybe a Friday night be strangling my mother, and my sister and I are pulling him off her and breaking up the fight. And then the next morning, he's up making this, grand breakfast from scratch with homemade hash browns. And we were just expected to come to breakfast and not talk about it. You just didn't say anything. And so if you can't even talk about your own feelings in your own home, you learn that, that you can't talk about it with anybody. And there's a certain amount of shame that's associated with it too. And so you live behind this facade the whole time. I have people I've been posting some on location videos on my social media campaign to take people to different places of in the book. And I have a lot of people from high school that are reaching out to me saying, I had no idea that this was happening. I had no idea that this was happening. And so I think that's a common theme for anybody that lives with domestic violence, is that you really don't know what goes on behind closed doors, because the shame is so profound for everybody involved, and especially the children. Again, you learn not to talk about it, and you just
Right.
say nothing.
Right. And I think that's something else that, like you mentioned, the shame of it. I'm gonna switch to a different topic in your book, if this is okay,
Yeah.
where you talk about how you had multiple instances where you were sexually assaulted.
Mm-hmm.
And you had already had this culture of don't talk about it and shame. And I think anyone that's ever been a victim of assault of any kind carries that with them. I want you to tell us some of what you did to get better, to heal, because you had a lot to heal from.
Mm-hmm. Well, for a long time, I didn't talk about any of it. I didn't. I mean, obviously, when my mom's murder became so public, I talked about that because it was something that was public, and I wouldn't have talked about it if it didn't go public. But with the sexual assaults that I experienced, I didn't talk about it for years, and because of the shame. Again, it's just another layer of shame. And sexual assault robs you of so many things. Self-worth is a huge thing, and so for many years, I didn't talk about it. I even started talk therapy when I was 19 to start dealing with just all the trauma in my life, but I still didn't talk about the sexual assaults, and it wasn't. And I did talk therapy on and off for maybe about 15 years, mostly on several different therapists. It helped, but it didn't. I didn't get past it. I in my mid 30s, I was still severely depressed and struggling. I actually was praying to die every day, and I finally found a new therapist that did some more holistic approaches to therapy, EMDR, NET, uh, cranial sacral method, neurofeedback. Uh, but I mainly did NET, which is neuro emotional technique, because I was actually too numb to even use EMDR at the time. And you got to remember that when I was 35, I'm going to be 52 on the launch date of the book. So that was quite a long time ago. Those were not mainstream trauma therapies at the time. So it was quite a miracle for me. And through that process, I worked really hard at the therapy, but I also worked on changing my mindset, trying to look at things in a more positive light. And I also worked on my faith in spiritual connection with God, because, I had all of these men in my life that traumatized me.
Yeah.
So actually having trust in God of any sort was hard for me. I believed that he existed, which I know that not everybody does, but I couldn't trust. And so over that period of time, I changed those. I worked on the trauma. I worked on my attitude, and I worked on my faith. And
Yeah.
over the course of 2.5 years of intense work on my part, there was a miraculous change in me. Like I said, I went from praying to die every day to really happy and whole, and with this understanding that it's okay.
Yeah.
It really is okay, and I can learn from these things. I can put things in my toolbox that's going to set me up to help others, and that's what I'm
Yeah.
trying to do now.
Yeah. And I think, you know, anyone that reads this book will see that you have gone through a lot of things. And while we may not have experienced the exact same thing, or even to the level, because you also went through a number of health problems too, I still think there are pieces in this book that all of us can relate to in one form or another. And even if it's we've struggled with something, or we've had the feeling of shame or not being good enough, there is hope and there is peace, and we can find that.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping the message is, you know, I've had so many different traumas and so many different things, but I've managed to find this path of healing for me. And I believe that it's possible for everybody. And you know, I'm an open book. If people want to reach out to me, if they want to ask me questions, you know, follow me on social media, reach out to me. I do my best to connect with people because it's important to me that I help. That's my whole goal in writing the book in the first place, is to help others.
Yeah. And we've got some of your contact information on the screen, and in just a second we're going to show all the different places that people can find you. And you share inspiring, thoughtful quotes all the time, so I encourage our viewers to go check you out on social media, and even more, go get Beautiful Ashes. It's available anywhere books are sold online, and or you can talk to your bookstore nearby, see if they've got it, or special order it. So thank you so much for being here with us, Shelly.
Thanks.
And thank you to our viewers. We'll see you next time.